The Zephyrian High Command had studied human military doctrine for cycles before their invasion. They understood conventional warfare, tank formations, aerial superiority, naval blockades. What they hadn't anticipated was what humans became when stripped of their armies, their governments, and their hope. Commander Vexithara reviewed the holographic reports floating before her aboard the orbital command vessel Dominion's Edge. 3 standard years since the initial invasion, and still the resistance persisted like a festering wound across 17 conquered worlds. The statistical models were flawless, she muttered, her chitinous fingers clicking against the control surface. Humans should have surrendered within 8 rotations of losing their primary military installations. Her aide, Sub-Commander Krell, shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we underestimated their capacity for what? Irrationality?
Suicide?
Vexithara's compound eyes fixed on the casualty reports. Look at these numbers, Krell. We've lost more personnel in the last rotation than during the initial conquest. The data painted a disturbing picture. Humans had adapted to guerrilla warfare with a creativity that bordered on the psychotic. They turned children's toys into explosive devices, used medical supplies to create chemical weapons, and converted farm equipment into instruments of war. Most unsettling of all, they seemed to take pleasure in the psychological warfare. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Adnan crouched in the ruins of what had once been New Mumbai. His weathered face bore scars from 3 years of underground warfare, and his eyes held the hollow intensity that marked all human resistance fighters. Beside him, Neha adjusted the improvised communication device they'd built from salvaged alien technology and old Earth components. The supply convoy will pass through Sector 7 in 43 minutes, she whispered, her voice barely audible even to Adnan. 3 escort vehicles, standard formation. Adnan nodded, checking his weapon. A hybrid creation that fired both conventional ammunition and captured Zephyrian energy cells. The humans had learned to reverse engineer everything the aliens threw at them, often improving upon the original designs through sheer desperation and ingenuity. Remember, Neha continued, we need at least 1 survivor for interrogation. The Ghost Protocol is still active. The Ghost Protocol. Even thinking about it made Adnan's stomach turn. It was Neha who had first proposed it, back when the Resistance was losing fighters faster than they could recruit them. The idea was simple in its horror. Make the aliens believe that dead humans came back to haunt them. Using a combination of holographic projectors, sound manipulation, and carefully timed psychological operations, the Resistance had convinced entire Zephyrian garrisons that human consciousness could survive death and seek revenge. The aliens' natural fear of the unknown made them particularly susceptible to such manipulation. Contact in 30 seconds, Neha breathed. The convoy approached exactly on schedule. The Zephyrians had maintained their rigid military precision, even in the face of 3 years of asymmetric warfare, a predictability that humans had learned to exploit ruthlessly. Adnan triggered the first device, a modified mining charge that created more noise and smoke than actual damage. As the convoy stopped and the escorts began their standard formation, Neha activated the Ghost Protocol. The holographic projector, hidden in the rubble 50 meters away, began displaying the translucent figure of Maya Chen, a resistance fighter who had died in this very location 6 months earlier. The projection moved with lifelike fluidity, appearing to rise from the ground where Maya had fallen. You cannot escape what you have done, the projection spoke in perfect Zephyrian, its voice carrying the distorted quality that the aliens associated with their own religious concepts of spiritual punishment. The effect was immediate. 2 of the escort soldiers broke formation, their weapons firing wildly at targets that couldn't be hit. The convoy commander began broadcasting emergency signals, calling for immediate evacuation. That's when Adnan struck. His hybrid weapon discharged a focused energy burst that disabled the convoy's primary vehicle, while Neha activated a series of small explosive devices that created the illusion of a much larger attacking force. In the confusion, with their ranks already disrupted by supernatural terror, the Zephyrians couldn't mount an effective defense. Within minutes it was over. 2 aliens lay dead, 1 wounded and captured. The convoy's supplies, medical equipment, communication devices, and most importantly, tactical intelligence, now belonged to the Resistance. As they prepared to extract their prisoner, Adnan caught sight of his reflection in a broken piece of alien technology. For just a moment, he didn't recognize himself. The man staring back had hollow cheeks, predatory eyes, and an expression of cold calculation that would have terrified the teacher he'd been before the invasion. "We're becoming something else," he said quietly to Neha as they dragged their captive into the underground tunnels. Neha paused, her own reflection joining his in the fractured surface. She looked like a ghost herself, pale, gaunt, with the kind of intensity that came from living on the edge of death for too long. "Good," she replied. "Maybe that's what we need to be." 3 levels above them, Commander Vexithara received the latest casualty report. Another convoy lost, another psychological warfare incident, another step toward what her military analysts were beginning to call operational impossibility. The humans weren't fighting like any species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. They didn't seek glorious death in battle or negotiate for favorable surrender terms. Instead, they had transformed themselves into something that defied conventional military understanding. A distributed network of predators who used the invaders' own technology, psychology, and fear against them. "Sir," Subcommander Krell approached hesitantly. "The Council is requesting a full strategic review. Some members are suggesting withdrawal." Vexithara's mandibles clicked in frustration. Withdrawal. From a species that still fought with projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. From creatures who had been confined to a single star system when the invasion began. But as she stared at the tactical displays showing 17 worlds in various states of unrest, with human resistance movements adapting and evolving faster than Zephyrian countermeasures could be developed, she began to understand a fundamental truth about warfare that their military academies had never taught. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy wasn't the one with superior technology or greater numbers. Sometimes it was the one with nothing left to lose and an unlimited capacity for becoming whatever the situation demanded. The humans hadn't just learned guerrilla warfare. They had evolved into it, transforming themselves into something their conquerors couldn't predict, couldn't understand, and couldn't defeat through conventional means. In the tunnels below, Adnan and Neha began interrogating their prisoner, their methods refined through 3 years of desperate necessity. They had become monsters, perhaps, but they were monsters with a purpose, and in the vast darkness of occupied space, that was exactly what humanity needed them to be.